Hey, I'm Shane. You see this sand? It's a big deal to me because I know when this sand gets there, which I'd like it to go a little faster, then I will get my Christmas cookies. I'm talking delicious double chocolate chip cookies. And they're one of my favorite things about Christmas. I love cookies, all of them. Like chocolate chip, the ones with the little chocolates in the middle, sugar cookies, sprinkles, give me all of them. It's one of my favorite parts about this time of year. I look forward to it because nobody cares how many I eat. I can have them all. And there's all sorts of things to look forward to when it comes to Christmas. From watching TV to social media to our community. It's easy to see that people are excited about the holiday season. There's a sense of cheer everywhere you turn. And as followers of Jesus, there's a great amount of excitement and joy because Christmas time is a time for us to remember the birth of our Savior, Jesus. So, what's your favorite thing about the holiday season? Is it the presents, which are awesome, or the cookies, which taste so good? Is it the time with your family, which is really special? Or is it the long break from school, which is amazing? What's the one thing about the Christmas season that you look forward to the most every year? I know for me, it takes me all the way into my feels. See, from the time I was a little kid and even in middle school and even as I got older, every Christmas Eve, we had this tradition where my dad would read me this book, The Polar Express. Yeah, it's kind of cheesy, kind of goofy, but it was really special to me. And honestly, it brought me a lot of joy. And maybe your favorite thing about Christmas is different than mine, but I bet the feeling you experience is the same. Think about when the first snow falls, if it snows where you are, when the tree is fully decorated, when we cozy up to watch our favorite holiday movie, maybe with some hot chocolate, when our family from out of town finally arrives and we know we're gonna have so much fun. That's when we experience that feeling that everyone seems to be talking about at Christmas. Joy. Okay, maybe joy isn't a word that you use all that often. In fact, outside of the Christmas season, you probably wouldn't say it at all. If you're like me, you'd probably describe it as happiness instead. But can I let you in on a little secret? Happiness and joy may feel similar, but they're actually two really different things. Happiness is what we feel in response to something. It's a reaction to our circumstances. When you get the present that you want for Christmas, you're happy. When you get the best grade in the class that you're in, you're happy. When your parents let you hang out with your friends later than usual over holiday break, you're really happy. That kind of happiness, it's not a bad thing. It's something that I want all of us to feel a little bit more, especially at Christmas time. But when we experience happiness, it's only for a moment. It's the result of something good that has happened, and that means when things change, our happiness usually does too. But joy's different. Joy's an attitude that we can have no matter what our circumstances are. Sure, you can experience joy in the same way as happiness. When something good happens, of course you can be joyful about it. But what's cool about joy is that you can also experience it even when the good stuff doesn't happen. It's a deeper, more lasting feeling that goes with us no matter what's going on around us. And I don't know about you, but that definitely sounds like something that I want. And if you're anything like me, when you hear that something like joy is possible, you'll do whatever you can to try and find it. Maybe you look for joy in a really cool experience, like a fun vacation at the beach. That sounds awesome, especially at Christmas time, or maybe a new location to make TikToks, whatever you do, I don't know what it is, or a cool place to hang out with your friends, that kind of stuff. It can bring you a little joy. Or maybe it's in an answered prayer or a circumstance that works out just the way that you wanted. When everything feels like it falls into place in life, or we get the good news that we're hoping for, that has to bring some joy our way. Maybe we look for joy in other people. When we spend time with our friends or have fun with our family, or even hang out with our small group, we feel like we're finding some joy. Here's the thing, we may look for joy in all of these things, but they actually bring moments of happiness. And at the end of the day, those moments pass. The feelings of happiness change. And just like that, we're back to where we started. So what do we do? If happiness isn't enough to keep us going when things get tough, how do we find the one thing that will help us no matter what? Where do we find real, lasting joy? To get our answer, I want to look back at one of the most joyful times on earth, the birth of Jesus. It's what we count down to and celebrate every year at Christmas. His arrival made everything different, including the way that we experience joy, because Jesus changed everything. Because the birth of Jesus was such a big deal back then, you'd think that some of the first people who heard about it would have been kings or religious leaders or super important people in the culture where Jesus was born. But in reality, it was actually a group of shepherds who got the good news first. Why does that matter? Well, shepherds were the people who took care of sheep, and sheep, they stink. And even though that was a really difficult job in Jesus' culture at that time, shepherds weren't considered to be all that important. In fact, a lot of people looked down on them, or they saw them as less than. So you can imagine everyone's surprise, including the shepherds themselves, when angels showed up to tell them about the birth of Jesus. And here's what the angels said to the shepherds. Let me read this to you. "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord." The angels could have said anything about the birth of Jesus. But notice what they said. "I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people." In other words, Jesus' birth brought something great to the world, joy. And not just joy that some people can experience, but joy for all people to experience. This is so important because the shepherds especially needed to hear this message. While the rest of the world might have thought that this joy wouldn't have been for people like them, the angels reminded them that it was definitely for them. In fact, it was for everyone. Now, the shepherds could have heard this and thought, that's cool. It sounds like something that might make us happy. They could have gone right back to their lives and moved on. But instead, what did they do? Well, if you read the rest of the story, you find out that they dropped what they were doing and set out to go see Jesus for themselves. They chose to go find and experience this great joy that the angels were talking about. They took action, trying to find the joy that they'd been told about. And this is exactly what we can do too. If we want to know where real and lasting joy is, the angels told us where to look. It's in Jesus. And if we want to experience that joy for ourselves, we have to take a tip from the shepherds and go look for it. Go experience it. Go find it in knowing Jesus. Because of Jesus, there is always joy. It's something we can choose because of Jesus. And it's something we can experience all the time when we know Jesus. We just have to be willing to look for it, even when our circumstances might make it hard to find. Now, maybe you're thinking, sure, that's easy for some people, but you have no idea what I'm going through right now. If you did, then you know that joy just isn't possible. If that's how you feel, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what you're experiencing. And in fact, I'd love for you to consider sharing with your group leader or with your small group today. Let them encourage and support you through it. That's why groups were created. But I also want you to know that joy, it's still possible for you. I know it is because of Jesus. When Jesus was alive on earth, he experienced so much suffering and so much pain. Jesus was ultimately arrested, beaten, and killed on the cross. That path was anything but joyful, but Jesus still chose it. Why? Because he knew that doing it would make joy possible for us today in all sorts of different circumstances. Take a look at how the writer of Hebrews puts it. "For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." Okay, here's what that means. Jesus knew what was coming to him. Jesus knew that the cross meant the end of his physical life on earth, but he still chose to walk the hard road toward it. Why? Because of the joy he knew that was on the other side, both for him and for us. Because of Jesus, there's always joy. Joy, it comes from understanding what God has done for us through Jesus. It's found in the gift of having a relationship with Jesus. It's something we can find when we get to know Jesus and spend time with him. It will show up in the most unexpected places and go with us, even when we experience something really difficult. It's the one thing that we can always count on finding when we look for it in Jesus, because knowing Jesus changes everything. My question for you today is this. What would it look like for you to go to Jesus for joy? Just like the shepherds did. What would it look like for you to look for and experience joy in Jesus? Here are 3 things that we can remember that can help us as we look for joy. 1, remember that God will use everything for good, even if the situation isn't. No matter what we're going through, we can have joy knowing that the one who has control of everything is using everything for good. Now, I know a lot of us are going through some really hard situations right now, and it might feel impossible that anything good could ever come from it. But that's the awesome part about God. We might not be able to see how God is using our situation right now in a way that will at some point be good. It might take weeks or months or years to see that good. But God promises to work for your good in every situation. To remind yourself of this, make it your lock screen, or write it on your mirror, or set a reminder on your phone to pop up daily. 2, you can also remember that God promises to make everything right in the end. We can have joy because we know how the story ends. We're living a story that will have a happy ending, and this is only the beginning. The story that God is writing in your life may feel really hard or broken or painful right now. Maybe it feels like things aren't supposed to be this way. And chances are, parts of your story will feel that way in the future too. I know that's been the case in my life. When we go through things that are difficult, it's okay to ask questions about whatever it is that we're dealing with. And by asking questions, we can actually get to know God more, which can help us remember that in the end, God will make everything right. Now, 3rd, remember to look for joy. If we want to experience that joy for ourselves, we have to do what the shepherds did and go look for it. Go experience it. Go find it and spending time with and getting to know God more. Maybe it's taking time to pray when you need a little more joy in your life. Or maybe it's even praying a prayer of thanks when you feel joy. Maybe it's spending time with people who love and believe in Jesus too, like your group. Or maybe it's reading more about Jesus in places like the book of Luke, where you can discover more about where this Christmas stuff all started. Whatever it is for you, commit to going to look for joy. Remember, because of Jesus, there's always joy. And that joy is something I hope you experience this Christmas season and beyond. And now, you know what that means. The cookies are ready. It's time. I love them so much. Merry Christmas.